And my friend Chris Smith is here and would be happy to yield such time as... Sure, whatever, yes.
Well, I want to thank...
So I will yield such time as he may consume to my friend.
I thank my very good friend and colleague for yielding. And I do raise my voice today, and I join my friend from Texas and others in a bit of a celebration, although it needs to be a cautious celebration because the tyranny on the island of Cuba continues unabated for so many others. But Nobel Peace Prize nominee Dr. Oscar Biset of Cuba, one of the bravest and brightest human rights defenders on earth, was released on March 12th from a wretched Cuban prison where he had endured 8 years of torture with periods of solitary confinement for his exemplary human rights work. It was Dr. Biset's second long-term, totally unjustified incarceration by Cuba, by Castro, totaling almost 12 years in prison. According to his wife, Elsa Morian, he was arrested at least 27 times and jailed for short periods of time between 1998 and 1999 alone. Yet he persisted and has an indomitable will that continues to this day. Dr. Biset's release and that of other prisoners of conscience was negotiated and announced by Cardinal Jaime Ortega, Archbishop of Havana. Yesterday, I had the high honor and the privilege to speak by phone with Dr. Biset, who is still in Cuba, and he conveyed, and I conveyed, I should say, my and I would say our collective respect, admiration, and abiding concern for his welfare and well-being, as well as that for his wife. He said during the conversation that she was pleasantly shocked and very happy to finally have him home. I let him know that he and his amazing work was never and will never be forgotten. Awarded the U.S. Medal of Freedom by President George W. Bush, Dr. Biset suffered the depravity of Castro's infamous gulag in order to bring the rule of just law, respect for human rights, and a robust democracy to Cuba. In our phone conversation, he absolutely insisted that freedom will and must be procured only through peaceful means. And of course, that work is far from finished. He said that faith in God was paramount and that prayer, quote, this is his quote, is of utmost importance. He is truly a man of God. Dr. Biset, an OBGYN, told me that the truth about what Castro has done to his people and continues to do must reach, these are his words, the truth must reach the Cuban people, and singled out Radio Marti as a valuable means to that end. Were you tortured, I asked him. He said last night, yes, yes, and his multiple serious health conditions that must now be addressed obviously are testimony to the cruel and severe mistreatment that he suffered. He told me that in prison he had to eat putrefied food and rice that was laced with worms. He endured solitary confinement with a mentally ill person, survived a dungeon with a knife-throwing criminal, and withstood burns all over his body from the prison's kitchen exhaust pipe that emptied into his cell. The Cuban government even attempted to take him for shock therapy at a mental institution in order to rid him of his passion for human rights. None of it worked, and by the grace of God, he has persevered with unparalleled bravery. Freedom House has ranked Cuba as one of the least free countries in the world. The only country which ranked lower on the freedom scale than Cuba was the nightmare gulag of North Korea. Yet, in an insane paradox, the Cuban tyrants remain romantic heroes for many in the United States, including some members of this Congress, who in 2009 visited Cuba and gushed with admiration for the dictators Fidel and Raul Castro, showing no compassion for the pain their courting and their enabling of Castro gave to all those suffering under his dictatorship. Castro has not succeeded in crushing the spirit of Dr. Biset. That same spirit and vision animates the so-called ladies in white, damas de blanco, the wives and relatives of imprisoned political dissidents like Dr. Biset, who attend Mass each week and march through the street dressed in white to symbolize peaceful dissent. Cuban police have detained and beaten these women for their peaceful protest. And lest anyone construe Dr. Bichet's release as the harbinger of immediate peace and respect for human rights in Cuba, consider this. Yesterday, Amnesty International published an alert that noted that quote, the repression of Cuban dissidents persist despite the releases. I will put the entire statement in, but they point out that there are numerous activists, new activists, men and women who are speaking out for human rights, who are now being rounded up, put under house arrest, and some held in detention. They pointed out that on the February 23rd, on the one-year anniversary of a great man named Tamayo's death, according to the Cuban Commission on Human Rights, the authorities placed over 50 people under house arrest before freeing them hours later. And the president of the Cuban Youth Movement for Democracy was arrested after organizing an activist meeting where? Inside his own home. And he is now has been arrested. Dr. Biset hopefully will receive the Nobel Peace Prize. As my friend and colleague knows, we have really orchestrated an effort all over the world. Parliamentarians were gladly writing in letters, including the Prime Minister of Hungary, asking the distinguished body that gives out that Peace Prize to consider Dr. Biset and hopefully the other Cuban dissidents for that prize. Leo Chabot got it last year, couldn't travel. They put the Peace Prize on the empty chair. Dr. Biset is out of prison and would be a great lifting of spirits and hopes for the people of Cuba for that Peace Prize committee to award him. And I want to thank my friend for yielding.
Well, I certainly thank my friend from New Jersey, Chris Smith. You are a leader. You are a man of conviction who cares deeply about those who have suffered for no good reason and standing for freedom. And you're a true patriot, and it's an honor to serve with you as a friend here. I don't know if you were aware, but in the discussion about all the foreign aid to countries who do not have the same abiding love and desire for freedom for all people and the same value of human life. I didn't know if my friend was aware of the fact that in 2008, I don't have the 2009 and 10 numbers in front of me, but for 2008, this country, the United States, provided $45,330,000 in aid to Cuba. And you can't help but wonder over the years, like with Dr. Biset, how much American money might have ever been used to help restrain heroes of this whole earth that should have been praised and appreciated, and yet we're giving money to brutal dictators who treat the best that humanity has to offer in this manner. Gentlemen, have some thoughts?
Well, the gentleman from Texas makes an excellent point. When you provide foreign aid, when you provide economic lifelines to dictatorships, it enables them to continue their repression. And years ago, we took a very principled stance against South Africa because of that abomination known as apartheid. And when the world united and said no more, it did lead to an end to that racist regime. Now, Cuba, for some reason, and China would fall into this category as well, but Cuba, to keep on point, has had trade with Canada and with the European countries of the European Union, and there's been no matriculation from dictatorship to democracy at all. If anything, they have gotten worse in many cases, clearly underscoring that when a brutal dictatorship is given money and wherewithal, they will continue their repressive ways. I believe, and I asked Dr. Biset this last night, about lifting the travel ban and lifting the trade embargo, which are two things that the Obama administration is seeking to do. And he said, don't do it unless there are conditionalities, human rights, democracy, free and fair elections. Otherwise, the secret police, the neighborhood block committees, and those who repress every person in Cuba, especially those who articulate a vision of freedom and democracy and human rights, is given additional power, hard currency. As Dr. Biset said on the phone, The Cuban government runs everything. So when you lift the trade embargo, when you have people traveling to Cuba bringing hard currency, you throw a lifeline. Better condition it, all of it, to human rights conditions. Again, had it worked, if that was the answer, as he said in the conversation last night, having a travel ability from Canada and trade and from the European countries, we would have seen a change towards democracy. It has not happened. It has gotten worse. I appreciate you bringing up that very good point.
Well, thank you. And what an anomaly to have a country that believes in freedom and liberty and human life and human value, and yet at the same time we demean it, whether it's giving money to entities that take unborn lives, or whether it's giving money to brutal dictators who certainly don't believe in freedom of religion, but are willing to take the lives of people because of their religion, or who repressively say, we told you you could have one child, so we're going to kill your other children. And it is just a mind-boggling thing, as Bo Pilgrim used to say. I'm sure he still does, but it's mind-boggling. How do we think that we're helping the world when we give massive amounts of money to people that are the very antithesis of the things that Americans have given their last full measure of devotion to preserve and protect? I yield to my friend.
You know, the date we lost China, in my opinion, was May 26, 1994. On that date, President Bill Clinton completely severed and delinked human rights with most favored nation status after getting accolades when he linked it a year before. He said, unless there's significant progress in human rights, we're going to condition our trading relationship and we will only look at performance. He shredded his executive order. We had the votes to take away MFN that year, which dissipated over time. I met with the human rights groups. I even went to China and realized that we were talking out of both sides of our mouth, like Janus, the Roman god, saying two things, you know, like some in diplomatic circles often do. And the foreign ministry in Beijing told me, we're getting most favored nation status. We don't care what you think about human rights. Fast forward to just a few weeks ago when Hu Jintao, the unelected president of China, visited with President Obama. Not a single public statement on human rights. So badly was it that when there was a press conference with Hu Jintao and President Obama at the White House, the president defended President Hu, when asked about human rights by an Associated Press reporter, and said, well, they have a different culture and they have a different political system. That was an outrageous statement that undermines all of the peace and freedom-loving people of China, tens of thousands of whom are in the Laogai, the Gulag system, suffering for peace and human rights and religious freedom. And it's as if to say somehow the Chinese people don't get it. They don't understand human rights. They sure do, and they want it. Ask Wei Jingsheng, Harry Wu, Chai Ling, and all the great human rights defenders, many of whom have spent years in the Gulag system. It was so bad that the Washington Post did an editorial, and it said, President Obama defends Hu Jintao, on rights. And took the president, rightfully so, you know, a very liberal newspaper, the Washington Post, to task for being so silent. Here it is. President Obama, 2009 Nobel Peace Prize winner, Liu Xiaobo, 2010 Nobel Peace Prize winner, and the man who put him in prison, Hu Jintao, and they're at a state dinner, first at a press conference, all kinds of other meetings, and not a single word about Liu Xiaobo. He should have said, Mr. President, release the dissidents. He did no such thing, kept it all to himself, even if he had those thoughts. And in China, because I went on People's Daily, because I read it often, I read it the next day, filled with accolades from the president for a dictator. It demoralizes the people in the Laogai, just like people in this chamber, just like the president, I believe, is demoralizing those suffering in the gulags all over the world, including in Cuba. So, gentlemen, is actually right. We need to be very serious, you know, and use the, what if it were I or my wife or my family that was suffering this? Would we just then look askance and embrace these dictators? I don't think so. I would hope not.
Well,
thanks for yielding.
I appreciate the gentleman's insights, but unfortunately, based on our modern history in this country, the indications are if you were being tortured and held in prison, it doesn't appear that this government would do anything different than what we've been doing. And the point that you make is so important. We've heard it from those who suffer and have suffered in gulags, who have been later released. And when we hear whether it was those held in Poland or in the Russian gulags or Chinese or Cuban, for example, when Ronald Reagan said this is an evil empire, what we have heard in more recent years is that gave us hope. Somebody was willing to stand up and call it what it was. And at the time, that kept them going. And our colleague here in the House, Sam Johnson, when he was a POW for 7 years in North Vietnam, being tortured daily, one of the most difficult things to endure was the information that our country did not care. Now it's heartbreaking to think about our friends who were suffering in horrible prison conditions, and we not only gave the impression we didn't care, we had people running around blaming those very people for their own troubles, when all they were trying to do was keep horrible repressive regimes from taking over and killing millions, as they did when we left. And so one of the great attributes of Reagan was he called things like he saw them. He did. And it gave hope to the world. And I don't know if my friend from New Jersey has heard me mention this, but last year around Easter, I was in West Africa and met with some of the West Africans who were Christians, and the oldest said he wanted to make sure that I knew that they were so excited when we elected an African-American president. That was thrilling to them, until they began to see that his policies were weakening America. And this elderly, wonderful, wise gentleman, with others younger all in agreement, said, you have got to make sure people in Washington understand, if you keep becoming weaker, we lose hope in this life. We know where our hope is in the next life. But as far as our hope for having a peaceful life in this world, it will be gone when you become too weak. Please tell your friends in Washington, do not let America grow any weaker. And here we overspend, we give monies to countries who hate us, who hate the things we stand for, who hate the fact that we believe in freedom, because they believe freedom leads to debauchery. And so they believe you should have some dictator, caliphate, somebody that tells you everything you can do and what you can't do, because freedom, they believe, corrupts. Whereas we know in our hearts, it's in our Constitution, it's in our Declaration of Independence, God gave us freedom to make choices. And it is one of the greatest things that America has done that I think has helped cause this nation to be blessed. We've stood for those freedoms, not just for America. There's no country in the history of the world that has ever given treasure and life of of that country's people, to get freedom for other countries, other people of whom we ask nothing in return. That is unheard of in the history of the world. And yet this nation has done it over and over. We've done it to help protect Muslims and give them freedom of choice, Christians, Buddhists. It did not matter. It was all about human rights, human dignity, and human freedom. And we see that slipping away every time we prop up some brutal dictator Every time we look the other way and pat cruel, evil people on the back and say, oh, we're so proud of you, we're glad to be your friend, when those like who've been repressed by Cuba say, please do not give more credibility to the oppressors.
Exactly.
Yield to my friend for any final thoughts.
I think you just made an articulate defense of why a consistent, transparent human rights, pro-freedom, pro-democracy foreign policy is absolutely essential if we want a world that is free of tyranny. Pope John Paul II once said, if you want peace, work for justice. Then he said, if you want justice, work on behalf of the disenfranchised unborn child, which I thought was a very good connection of human rights from womb to tomb. But you made an excellent point about Ronald Reagan. Yesterday, Natan Sharansky, the great dissident, and Frank Wolf and I actually got into the prison camp, Perm Camp 35, where he spent so many horrible days and nights in the Shiju, which was the punishment cell. We were there in the late 80s, right after he got out. And you remember, he didn't just walk in a straight line when the KGB said you walk right across. He did a zigzag, you know, his ultimate act, final act of defiance to the KGB. But he said just what you just brought out, Judge Gomer, and that was that when Ronald Reagan talked about the evil empire, he said it again yesterday. They knew that we got it, that there was hope, and it gave him hope. It gave the other political dissidents hope. Jewish, Christian, whatever their denomination or religious belief, they said, America understands the inherent failure of communism, the militant atheism which it represents, as Solzhenitsyn said it in his books, and he had hope. Wei Jingsheng, correspondingly, who is the father of the democracy wall movement in China, a great leader, he told me when they let him out to get Olympics 2000, not the one they just had, Olympics 2000, and the Olympics Committee didn't give it to him because it was such violators of human rights. Unfortunately, they capitulated some years later. He said when you kowtow, when you enable, when you pander to dictatorship, including the Chinese dictatorship, especially the Chinese dictatorship, they beat us more in prison. So, but when you're tough, transparent, you look the dictator in the eye and says, we're not kidding, we want these people released, they beat us less. That's from a man who spent 20 years in the Chinese Lao Gai. Harry Wu and all the others have said the exact same thing. So when President Obama kowtowed for the better part of a week in front of Hu Jintao, it was a shameless, in my opinion, a shameless exercise of lack of commitment to human rights, and they beat the dissidents more because they will tell them, America has abandoned you. Thankfully, in a bipartisan way, because when Hu Jintao came right here on Capitol Hill, it was our Speaker, Speaker Boehner, who raised human rights and raised the inherent violations of human rights in the one-child per couple policy. The missing girls, 100 million missing girls in China. The result of a one-child per couple policy where brothers and sisters are illegal, and over the course of 30 years, since 1979, when that horrific policy, the worst crime against women ever, went into effect, they have systematically exterminated the girl child, and now many of them are not here even as young women. 40 million men won't be able to find wives by 2020 in China because they have been forcibly aborted as part of this one-child per couple policy. Huge gender disparity, which raises problems about potential war. There's a book called The Barren Branches. It talks about, you know, this restless male population can't ever get married because they're not there. It's also a magnet for human trafficking. Our president should have stood boldly. I say diplomatically. I've met with, Frank Wolf and I met with Li Peng when he was premier. We had a list of political prisoners. We talked about the one-child per couple policy. We talked about religious freedom. We looked them right in the eye. Almost no one ever does that. You'll do it. I'll do it. Our president should do it. President Bush did it. He raised religious freedom robustly with the Chinese government on his trips. Mrs. Clinton, on her first trip to Beijing, said, I'm not going to let human rights, quote, interfere with global climate change issues and the issue of debt. So it really is a very serious abandonment of the people who need it most, who will be the next Lech Wales's or Harry Wu's or Wei Jingsheng. So the evil, you bring up an excellent point, and I thank you for your leadership on human rights and the peace agenda, which is really the freedom agenda.
It is certainly an
Thank you.
honor to serve with you, and I hope, I don't know if you're aware, our friend Ted Poe, our colleague, has a bill that's trying to force all foreign aid to come to a vote country by country, that would give us the chance to discuss these very things on each country on whether or not we should give them assistance.
What a great judge.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Isn't that wonderful? So I look forward to that in time to come. Mr. Speaker, is my time expiring?
Yes, your time has expired,
All right.
Mr.
Then,
Goldberg.
very well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We appreciate the time to discuss this very important issue, and especially now that money is so critically needed and that we should not be wasting it to help those who repress others. With that, we yield back.
Thank you. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2001, the Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Nunnally, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's time for the United States Senate to act. The Democrats in the United States Senate, the Democrat leadership in the United States Senate have failed the American people. Last year, when the Democrats controlled the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the White House, their leadership failed to adopt a budget. In fact, for the first time since adopting the Budget Act of 1974, the House of Representatives failed to pass a budget. Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid left our country in a mess. Today, we are operating without a long-term spending plan. It must stop. Earlier this year, a new majority came into the House of Representatives. And under the leadership of John Boehner, this new majority adopted a long-term spending plan that would outline the priorities of our government throughout September 30th of this year. In this very chamber, we stayed up late at night for 4 nights in a row. We debated, and we hammered out a long-term spending plan. That plan included the largest cut in spending in American history. We defunded Planned Parenthood. We defunded NPR. We defunded Obamacare. We placed significant restraints on regulatory agencies that have gone out of control, such as the EPA. And then the bill moved down to the Senate. And the Senate has failed to act. Since then, in order to give them more time, we've granted 2 budget extensions, one for 2 weeks, and then earlier this week we extended it for 3 more weeks. But included in those budget extensions were $10 billion worth of spending cuts. While we've offered those temporary extensions, the permanent plan that has passed this chamber still languishes in the Senate. The leadership of that body has not passed our spending plan, or for that matter, any spending plan. We're waiting. But more importantly, the American people are waiting. We cannot negotiate with silence. If they don't like our spending plan, then let them put forth one of their own. But it's time for the Senate to act. These temporary extensions are no way to run a business, and there's certainly no way to run a country. Earlier this week, our negotiators asked for 3 more weeks. Since we've only been in office for a little over 10 weeks, I thought it was wise to grant that extension, and I voted for it. Here, the House has been doing the work of the American people. We passed H.R. 2, the bill that repeals Obamacare. We've defunded Obamacare in its entirety, including the $105 billion of pre-approved spending, and we're moving forward. In fact, I don't think we should stop until Obamacare is completely defunded. The House is working on legislation that will eliminate permanently that mandatory slush fund, and I hope we'll vote on that in the upcoming weeks. But it's time for the Senate to act. America wants real spending reform so that we can give businesses, large and small, the confidence they need, the predictability they need, and they can go out and be about the business of creating jobs that will grow our economy. It's time for the White House and the Senate to listen. House Republicans can only do so much. We only have control of 1/2 of 1/3 of the government. And so we cannot act by ourselves. It's past time for the Senate to act. Over the next 3 weeks, we'll be waiting and we'll be watching to negotiate a long-term solution that will get us out of this mess that they left us in when they concluded last year. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today on a motion offered pursuant to this order, it adjourn to meet at 10 a.m. on Friday, March 18, 2011, unless it sooner has received a message from the Senate transmitting its concurrence in House Concurrent Resolution 30, in which case the House shall stand adjourned pursuant to that concurrent resolution.
Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman from Mississippi.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to the order of the House of today, I move that the House now adjourn.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Accordingly, pursuant to the previous order of the House today, the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. on Friday, March 18, 2011, unless it sooner has received a message from the Senate transmitting its adoption of the House Concurrent Resolution 30, in which case the House shall stand adjourned pursuant to that concurrent resolution.
Today in the House, members voted 228 to 192 to prohibit federal funds for public